welcome back. You are watching and listening to Breakfast with Ellie and Nicholas.
Indeed, let's take a look now at today's front pages.
And the Times leads with the Duke of Sussex. War heroes are condemning him after his memoir revealed he killed 25 people when he was a helicopter pilot in Afghanistan.
And the Iron paper says there are security fears in Britain following the discovery of a Chinese tracking device found in a government car.
The Guardian says Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich's billion-dollar trusts were transferred to his children before Russia's sanctions were imposed.
And the Daily Mail says veterans are accusing the Duke of Sussex, Harry, of putting the security of ex-comrades and royals at risk after he revealed he killed, or said he killed, 25 insurgents in Afghanistan.
The Financial Times says Rishi Sunak is inviting trade union leaders to talk on Monday in a bid to stave off industrial strikes from rail, postal and health workers.
The Daily Express leads with King Charles, who reportedly wants to build bridges with his son, Prince Harry.
Well, it's time to go inside the papers now, and joining us this morning is author Ella Whelan and broadcaster Claire Muldoon. Now, let's start with you, shall we, Ella? And this is something a bit different. We're going to avoid Harry for the moment, shall we? Fears for national security are emerging after Chinese tracking devices are found in government cars. Tell us a bit more about this.
Yeah, so, I mean, an ongoing story has been the question of Chinese spies or influence within the palaces of Westminster. There have been revelations previously about certain politicians being compromised with the kind of people that they're hanging out with in the bars and things like that. But this is to do with, there was a kind of a sweep of cars used by ministers take the cars apart and look at if there's anything planted in them. And there was at least one SIM card capable of transmitting location data found within a car. It was in a sealed part, and the part was imported from a supplier in China. So the suggestion is that there are these location trackers that are put into ministers' cars, and it provides the Chinese state with a picture of where ministers are going. And, the idea is not to have specific data on a specific person, but just to kind of collect as much information as possible on UK politicians and officials. And, this is, it's all, that there's nothing been proven yet. This is just that this SIM card has been found. The Chinese government says that this is just rumour and dismisses this completely. But then there are politicians who are hitting back and saying that there needs to be more done to protect against the potential for Chinese spying. Ian Duncan Smith quoted in the paper saying that we need to refer to China as a systemic threat, so changing the official language around how you deal with that country. Others preaching slightly more caution and saying there are ramifications if you do use that kind of language about China, and it has an effect on trade, it has an effect on potential, when we've got war at the heart of Europe, there are potential consequences for changing that kind of language. I think most people know that there is a certain amount of data collection going on from China. It's not surprising that something like this happens. The question is whether or not it poses a significant enougth threat to do something about it.
Does the paper make... a tracking device is one thing. They're just... naively, I assume that means you can find out where people are going. But is it suggested it's also listening in as well and all of that?
So some of this... you might not know this, but most cars do have some kind of SIM card technology, and even on a very basic level, there is the it's not kind of the realms of
very easily. I know
it's not the realms of sort of science fiction to imagine that people can listen in and things like that in especially in modern cars that ministers would be using. There are some obvious solutions to this. Making sure that one of the parts that the eye goes into is the fact that hire cars are often used. If you're going to be driving ministers around, probably having a fleet in-house that is checked regularly would be sensible. But there is the potential for listening in and recording more data.
But who found this device? Remember, was it Barry Gardiner, the MP, that had very close links to China, and there was implicit directives that he was actually taking money from China, or there was something going on. But I want to know who actually found this device and who knew about it and the ramifications of it to prevent anything like this happening again.
I think it was just an official UK government kind of move to look through the cars to figure out, just as a precautionary measure, because everybody is on high alert within the palaces of Westminster at the moment because of Gardner and others letting their guard down.
Right, Claire, let's go now to the story, which you can't get away from.
I know.
I love the fact that the Daily Mail has on its headlines, it so often does the word fury.
Oh, gosh, I know. I mean, with
Tell us what
Daily Mail, I mean, this is just right up their street, isn't it, to cover something like this, and to have such explosive headlines and sub-headlines. You know, so we've gone from fears for national security emerge after Chinese tracking device, and now we have Harry faces global fury over Taliban kill claims. So we've got another national fury coming on. I mean, can this guy do any more damage? Not only just to himself, not only just to his family, but to his, his father, his brother, everything else.
Maybe to all of us.
He seems to be going out hell for leather to destroy everything that he has, that the Queen has built up, that the monarchy has built up. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a massive monarchist, and I'm not a massive monarchy fan. However, the Queen left a fantastic legacy. I think the woman was absolutely wonderful. And this chap, I don't know. There was rumours today that he actually tried to halt the publication of the book.
Yes, well,
is that right?
I was going to come. This is apparently in a later edition. We've got early editions.
Yeah.
What happens? But there's a later edition of the Times. As I say, we don't have it in front of us, but we do know what they're saying, suggesting exactly that Harry had second thoughts, came to the Platinum Jubilee and said, we don't know second thoughts about which bit, of course. It could have been any number. I would suspect it was second thoughts about what he was saying about members of his family.
Of his family, I would agree, Nicholas. And, but the thing is here, there's not one senior member of the Army, Navy, anyone is actually saying what he has said is a good idea. To come out and almost boast that he killed 25 people, and he desensitised that, he dehumanised them by making them out as chess pieces. I mean, that's abhorrent, absolutely abhorrent. And we know he was taken out of military service because he was a risk not only to himself, but also to his troops.
The other thing, Claire, when Harry was complaining at earlier things, the Netflix series, other interviews and so on, and right back to Oprah Winfrey, he talked about the way that the tabloids were always after, made his life a misery.
He's feeding them,
exactly,
isn't he?
Exactly the word I would use.
I mean, why complain and then do what you say you don't like to do? You're absolutely feeding it, and it's that narrative that he's pushing. And the other thing, apparently he put his therapist on speed dial after the fight from his brother, and yet his wife apparently didn't have access to any mental health help at all in the palace. It just seems disingenuous to me. It just doesn't add up.
There are discrepancies, and I think this is the fear, isn't it, Claire, that the more you speak, the more you can trip yourself up or share too much. What is interesting, I was going to put this to both of you, is we've had a lot of views coming in the past 24 hours since this story has broken. Some saying that this mention of killing 25 Taliban fighters was intentional in order to increase his threat level and therefore have that security given back to him, or do you think it was just stupidity, oversharing? What are your thoughts?
I think it's in relation to, it's in line with everything he's shown himself to be in terms of sort of egotistical brat. I mean, it's pretty disgusting to boast about. I don't care who it is, to boast about killing people as a means to kind of, display your macho-ness or to signify something of a kind of success story for yourself. Whatever you think about that particular conflict and that particular context, there's actually in The Guardian and in other places, there are army generals quoted saying, hang on a minute, we don't do notches on the rifle butt.
No, of course not.
But this is also a young man who complains about having his necklace broken.
Exactly. Well, it's one of those things.
Slight disconnect between these two Harrys.
Who is he? Is he this kind of gun-wielding, kind of brave fighter, or is he this kind of sad sap who gets into fights with his older brother? He can't play both.
But you know what? When Archie and Lilibet grow up, right, and they have access to this book, I think he's going to be incredibly embarrassed about the salaciousness of what he is actually told in this book. Losing his virginity, his drug taking. There's nothing in that that's respectful. There's nothing in that would build a character. There's nothing in that would help the family unit grow. It's salacious. It's tabloid.
And it's things that you wouldn't even tell your close friends. I mean, to publish it in the
No.
world, it just seems...
Ellie, no. No, absolutely not.
The word he uses is truth, isn't it?
Well, gosh,
Yeah.
instead of spare, it should be spare us, because I'm just over it.
Okay.
And it does lead the question, doesn't it, as well, who's advising them? Because, if you had a sensible advisor, surely they'd be telling you to stop and stop now. Ella, let's go from China to Russia, shall we? And
away from Harry.
And away from Harry, just for a moment, shall we? Yes. A Russian oligarch has transferred his assets, perhaps not a surprise to many people.
Yes, well, away from Harry, but still sticking with billionaires and brats. There is the children of Roman Abramovich had the assets that were going to be stripped from him at the onset of the UK government and other places threatened with the prospect of the onset of war in Ukraine. He quickly, it seems that, according to some anonymous documents that were anonymously shared with The Guardian from the offshore provider Merit Service, which is the kind of organisation that deals with all these offshore collections of money and for billionaires, found that he basically shifted all of his assets towards his children so that they became billionaires overnight. And this happened, the important thing is that this happened 3 weeks before Putin's war in Ukraine began. And so then, it comes as a surprise to absolutely no one that someone as rich as this would be able to work out how to not lose all of his assets and money with threat from the UK government. And the suggestion in The Guardian is that the rules should be changed to have the children have their assets stripped as well. The legality of that, I'm not sure. There is Sophia Abramovich, Roman Abramovich's daughter, infamously came out in a few weeks after the war began saying, there is the biggest lie is that all Russians support Putin. So there is I think which most people probably didn't take incredibly seriously given her father's relationship and history with the Russian state. But, there is the kind of whole argument about asset stripping from Russians, I think, has its limits because, lots of people at the time when Roman Abramovich was in the papers and in the news pointed out the, the sort of contradictions between doing something like that and then there was the question about Saudi Arabia, and you get into kind of you get into moral quandaries. But the most important thing is to continue to say that, criticise Putin and to highlight what the Ukrainians are doing in that war.
Yeah, but closer at home, Michelle Mone and her husband, siphoned off some of the profits from PPE MedPro, didn't they? And that's why the Department of Health and Social Care now have lodged a lawsuit against them to try and get that done, because she siphoned money, the company siphoned money off to make her children benefactors from the profits of the PPE, which we know now some of it wasn't even fit for purpose.
Right, okay, fair enough. Let's go on to something else.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk now about the Financial Times.
Yeah.
Yes, and Sunak holding talks with trade union leaders. Claire,
no.
This is about trying to do something about all these rash of strikes.
Why wasn't this done before Christmas? Why has he left it now? I think things have, the cart has run. The horse is gone now. He should have done this before Christmas, and he should have shown strength in his leadership. I don't think, this is a sign of a very weak government when unions have got such a stronghold over the government. Steve Barclay, who's here, I saw his picture for the first time.
Which is the health.
Yes.
Yes.
These faceless politicians seem to not have the grips of not only public opinion, but also the unions that are holding the government to account. And when Mick Lynch started striking back in, was it May last year or whatever, I think everyone had a huge support for them. But now I think people have lost support because of what happened at Christmas time, that people couldn't meet up, you know, and it seems to be damaging industry and work. No one can get into work. We were moving away from the working from home, trying to get everyone back into the office. That's gone back. But give him his dues. He's stuck by his guns. He's doing his job, and thank goodness now maybe Sunak will start to do his, because you know, it's ridiculous.
But is it, when you say that Sunak start to do his job,
Yeah.
what we're talking about here is vast amounts of taxpayers' money.
Yes.
One way and another, more amounts of taxpayers' money are going to have to be thrown at the railways, which are, you could argue, in decline because of the strikes. I mean, there are
Nicholas,
different parts of this argument, aren't there?
Did the railways ever work in this country properly? I mean, we look at the franchising of Virgin, then that was sold to Avanti. We've got LNER. You know, the problem with this country is the fact that the railways lines actually are nationalised, but the actual companies are franchised, and there's no joined up thinking. Don't forget, the shareholders in Avanti, the shareholders in LNER are still getting paid. They're getting paid more than the workers are, and he is just, Mick Lynch and the rest of ASLEF, RMT, they're only trying to do best by their members, and you've got to give them credit for that, regardless of what you think. And now, because of that, I think because the government weren't strong enough, you've now got the health service, where Mark Harper is the Secretary of State for Health. Who's he? And then you've got the fire brigade, teachers. Everything is now going to come out, and it's shocking, and it's such a sad state of affairs.
Does that story indicate that Sunak's going to try and take some sort of different line, or just
No.
to impose his
No, because-
personality, if you like, as Prime Minister?
No, the narrative is the most pressing economic priority we have is reducing the cost of living, and getting a grip of inflation is the best way we can do that to ease the cost of living, not only for nurses but for everyone, Rishi Sunak said.
Well, concentrating on the rate of inflation.
Yes, but this is not labour inflation. Inflation is not stemmed from rising costs of labour. That's the other thing. It's far too technical. It's far too difficult. But I think this is a good step that he's taking on Monday. I hope it does go well. But I think it should have been done far before now.
It's also, I mean, you know, you have to be sceptical, I think, because if you listen to the narrative that's coming out of government ministers when they're asked about having talks with union leaders or anyone who discusses the strikes within the Conservative Party, the main line that they push is that the unions are, particularly in the railways, unions are unreasonable because they won't accept modernising reforms. But it's a very disingenuous line, because what it actually translates as is saying the unions will not accept redundancies, because these modernising reforms, 9 times out of 10, amount to sacking people, whether that's people who check in the lines or anything like that. And as union leaders are, quite rightly so, not going to accept mass redundancies. So there is this disingenuous way in which the talks and the negotiations are described by government ministers, as if, in particular on the railways, union leaders are just these kind of dinosaurs who are saying, no, we want everything to stay the same, nothing to run quicker or smoother or more efficiently. And so that needs to, I'm sceptical to the point at which Sunak is going to be able to talk more honestly about that and actually come out and say, well, what we're demanding is that you sack X% of people in order to be able to have your wage increase.
Although Network Rail have said there won't be mass redundancies, and they've actually got a lot of people want to go anyway. Must be aware that
private companies, when they want to have a labour cull, it's always natural. It's always people who will take early retirement, or people who are perhaps ill, or people who just think, you know what, I've just had enough. I'm just going to leave. But the thing about the railways, I don't know why we don't look to countries like Italy or France or Spain, where the trains work so well and they run to the minute. They're wonderful, and yet we just can't seem to get to grips with it.
That's certainly what Mick Lynch was saying when he spoke to GB News yesterday. I'm afraid that's time, Claire and Ella, but thank you so much for a brilliant first newspaper review. You're with us for the whole programme, so we will return. There's lots of other stories that we're going to be touching on. And of course, Prince Harry as well. It can't be avoided, I'm afraid.
No, unfortunately not.
But Claire and Ella, thank you so much.